I'm glad that companies raise money because otherwise I would be out of a job. But the best money is money from the customers, not from the investors. So if you really can skip it, why not? I can tell you that today, I don't see any company skipping fundraise and demo day because when you're at YC, you're always commanding a slightly higher valuation than usual, especially if you're in the sort of the top of the batch in terms of revenue. Did you know that Y Combinator is giving you every quarter a list of specific startup ideas that they want to fund, that they want you to build and apply with YC with? And if you actually build that, your odds of getting in are much, much higher. That's YC's request for startup. And this is mostly what we're going to be talking about today with Laurie. So Laurie, thank you once again for joining me on the show.
Yeah, great. It's cool to talk about the RFSs. We've now see 4 a year, whereas previously they would release them a bit more sporadically. It seems like much more of a effort now to put these out. They always create some very interesting talking points and also seem to track slightly ahead of what we can expect in the upcoming demo day, which is in a month's time. So yeah, let's walk through them.
Okay, so the very first topic on the docket is retraining workers for the AI economy. Basically, there's going to be a lot of worker displacement due to AI, and we need to build a lot more stuff. There's the race for new semiconductors, new data centers, also building more weapons. And so YC is calling for AI to help and create those jobs and train those people to be able to do those jobs. So, Laurie, what is this inspiring to you?
Yeah, interesting because I think one of the things that is happening a lot with the growth of AI and kind of this threat or incoming of AGI superintelligence, whatever that might look like, is a fear of what happens to white collar workers. But actually, there's probably more conversation needed around like what we should be doing with blue collar work. There's a huge shortage in the US and across much of the West now about how we upskill these workers, how we do more, how we bring them in to use more of the efficiencies of things like AI. And so this is like an interesting point around that. I especially think there's kind of two things here that are interesting for Lobster. So like one is around that GPU and the compute and the data infrastructure side of things. I know that you invested in the company
Inversion semiconductor.
Inversion Semiconductors. Yeah. So I don't know if I'll be interested to hear your take on like as you're evaluating a company like Inversion, is a lot of what they're pitching, is a lot of what your evaluation is just this general need for compute and energy is just going to keep going up, right?
It was really something that I saw. I mean, their idea was to reshore ASML or to build the American first ASML. We're in a new world. I actually think this is what we talked about in our previous episode. So if you haven't listened to it or watched it, you can go back from last month, where we need to reshore critical infrastructure, military, GPU, some healthcare had to, we can't create vaccines without China today. So that's another topic, but it was for me very important to realize, well, it's deep tech. It is a very bold bet. They might not make it. Obviously, the founders are extremely, extremely incredible. In the specific case of Inversion Semiconductor, to actually build it. But if they do build it, it's going to be a no-brainer for the U.S. government, for the Department of Defense and everyone else to stand behind them, to help them, to give them as much money as they can, because it is sort of another problem for the US not to have their own chips, and ASML is a big part of that. They're not very excited that it's not a US company. And again, it's a small piece of the puzzle. There's the Taiwanese situation, and thank God ASML is not in Taiwan. But just having you can't build chips if you don't have the machine to build the chips, and the machine to build the chips is actually built from ASML. So this was absolutely a big part in my decision, in my vision of they might not make it like any startup, but if they do, the consequences are going to be insane. Something else that really is interesting for me with this specific request for startup is it's AI related, but it is really sort of real world problem, real world application. It is about getting people jobs, getting people training. And then it talks about how do you actually use AI to train people? Well, it could be it's not like coding. And again, this is quoting from the RFS, where you can just teach people in front of a screen. You got to teach them in real life. So I think that's really, really cool. It could be, of course, everyone thinks, and I was immediately thinking of AR, VR, and then how does AI fit in there? Or maybe it's a voice coach, Harj says in the RFS. But so it's for the jobs of AI, for the jobs of infrastructure and manufacturing, and of course for the chips and the data centers. But it could end up being just an AR VR play with very little AI. AI is going to be here. AI is going to be everywhere. But it could end up being an AR VR play to
I
service
love
the
this.
AI industry. Yeah.
I love that people are kind of talking about AR, VR again. Like this, my background, around 2018, 2019 was doing VR startups, and there was a lot of like, oh, the hardware's not kind of ready, and all of these very, very complex simulations to build with things like Unreal Engine, Unity. But as they kind of get easier to build, the use cases definitely scale more, and there is some huge like opportunities here. Like there are some very, very big companies, things like Class VR, Engage XR, who have done a lot of revenue in training. Mostly, these are kind of stuck in some like soft skills or in education. But as they move out to, the Department of Defense, for example, has spent a lot of money on AR VR training. Like as those start to filter down into, what is that for electrical engineering? What is that for architects? What is that for plumbing? Is a really kind of compelling use case, and even in the the gaming sector as well, like generative AI, and we'll touch on this a bit as we talk about the RFS around video. The generation of like 3D worlds and simulated data, simulated training scenarios is something that's like really exciting, and it would be interesting to see if YC then brings in some VR
They
like
will.
application
Yeah.
companies.
One YC company that I was really, really impressed with from just the last batch or the batch before was this OS for glasses. It's very interesting that there's no, it's the Android of smart glasses, open source. Is it? Well, I don't want to say the name because I'm not sure, but anyway, you can find it. Uh, they're and I think it's only the beginning that they're going to bring more and more AR and VR. It's very interesting. We had the Apple Vision Pro and big launch, big thing, and then it really fell out of favor very quickly. They stopped producing it. They did not come up with a new model yet, but I'm pretty sure they're
Yes.
silently building the next version that's going to be much, much, much better. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. That's Metro, I think, right? Metro, who are building
I
Augment
had I
OS.
had I had Mastra in my head, so but
Oh,
it's
maybe
not. Yeah, Metra.
Augment. I think it's Augment OS. I can't remember the company that was building it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely an
Oh,
interesting one. I
Mentra,
think
you're
the
right. It's
other
Mentra. Sorry. You're
Metro,
absolutely
yeah.
right.
I think the other company that's like really interesting in this space to do with training isn't actually around people, but is on the robotic side is Nunu AI. I think they were
Yeah,
2023 of some batch. They also
remember
did
them.
A16Z's speed run, but they were doing like multimodal agents who were training in gaming environments and then applying that to like to robotics. And that's kind of a similar thing there about like how do we solve these real world physical
Yeah,
problems through using, games or 3D AI technologies.
they actually share an office with one of my portfolio companies. So I've seen them. Seen them several times when I was visiting my portfolio company, Nunu AI. Okay, let's move on to our next request for startup.
The second one is video generation as a primitive from David Leeb. I'm sure you'll have seen, tons of videos now on your Twitter or LinkedIn feeds with Google VO3. They're, getting super good at generating these video clips. And in this request for startups, YC is talking about a lot of things about how media will change, media will become more personalized. You'll have your own TV show, but then also even touching on the last topic we talked about, like what happens with gaming, like if gaming no longer requires an engine and could be auto generated on the fly, what happens there? And the use case that I immediately think about there is with, if you've ever used Apple Vision Pro and you've used like spatial memories or spatial photos, like what does that look like when you can now step into that scene? So it's a real convergence of these technologies again, 3D tech, maybe things like AR, VR, as well as AI on here. Gabriel, you're definitely like a very media first, media thinking individual. What do
Oh
you think
yeah.
about this video generation?
This one is just so fascinating for me, and I agree. I think the convergence with, for me, it's more specific than AR VR. Is really is glasses that are almost indistinguishable from real glasses that are not heavy. So there's a lot of problems here to solve with the battery and day long battery life and etc. But when those collapse, it's going to be insane. But even on a computer, even on a phone, um, the things that David talks about in this RFS is insane. Creating a cartoon movie with your kids or your entire family as the main characters, or reenacting an entire TV show. Like, oh, do a Star Wars movie number 7 where Yoda Master XYZ. I don't know. I'm not a Star Wars fan, but create your own fantasy. But it's an actual movie. So big, big, big problem for Hollywood, obviously, but good news for startups. And then what David talks about is basically video generated on the fly for almost zero, marginal cost or just cost of compute, which is going to track to zero at some point, or nearly zero. And the expression he uses is video generation as a primitive, not as an output. I think this is really interesting because video has always been an output. This is what we're doing right now. We're first recording a podcast, then there's an editing process, which, by the way, we use AI, but there's still a human in the loop. At some point, maybe there's no human in the loop anymore, but today there's still a human in the loop. We use AI. And then the output is actually the podcast that you're listening or watching right now. But I always forget, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe on the YouTube channel, turn on the bell notification, leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. This really helps. Thank you very much. So there's a big change. Video is it's gonna be like software. AI is generating software. AI is gonna generate video for everything. Some example he gives, when you're shopping, you're just seeing yourself. When you're apartment hunting, it's already mapped with your furniture, but you can think of so much stuff. You can think of when you're on vacation, it's actually, before you go, giving you the clip of what your vacation is, giving you the memory clip of, and with adding your head, your face, and your family, and like, this is what it's going to look like. And then you can watch 5 different videos and be like, okay, this is the one that I want. This is the memories that I want to create. It's going to be created before you. And of course, talking to your loved ones when they're gone. I think about this a lot. There might be a world where you talk with, you can still call your dad and have hour-long discussion, and I don't see my parents physically that often. So maybe if it's on the phone, at some point it almost becomes indistinguishable than a real relationship. Obviously, I'd rather actually call my real parents, but you know what I mean, right? So all of this is super interesting, and what I love about it is it's similar to AI. We haven't even uncovered the use cases. Like this is what we dream of today, and it's sort of the obvious, but there's going to be so much that we don't even know, don't even think about. He also mentions a TikTok version where every video is made exactly for one viewer. So every video, TikTok is really good because every feed is different for everyone and hyper personalized, but it's still video created by the users. But what if it's really a video tailor made? It's insane. So of course, also a lot of problem. I had this discussion with Prati from Sync on this very podcast. All the dangers of deep fake and politicians saying the wrong, like if you get a video from Trump saying, I'm declaring war on X country, on Russia, and then Russia strikes back with a nuclear missile, but it's actually a fake video. Like, you don't, like, so much terrible stuff could happen as well, but it's going to be fascinating. I'm so happy that YC is not leaving video behind, because it would be easy for them to ignore and say, oh, we do code, we don't care about video. Obviously YC is a YouTube channel attached to a startup incubator, like we've talked about before. I take this very seriously as well. I'm also a VC fund attached to a podcast and a YouTube channel. But yeah, it's so cool to see them. And there's a lot of, every batch, there's several video specific companies, including in this upcoming batch. There's actually one of the top three in terms of traffic. Top three companies of this current batch is a video company. So lots of people are interested in that as well.
Mhm. Yeah, this is interesting because that word primitive is like what happens when video is the first thing that you can create to like demonstrate an idea or talk about a concept. Is interesting. There's the first order effects of these is more clearly probably related to like advertising. Like Wondercraft, they just launched a new product called Wonder. They went through YC in 2022 actually as like a tennis product, but then they pivoted and now they're doing this Wondercraft, which is like audio generation and video generation. Um, it seems like that's kind of going to skew towards advertising, but actually the second order effects of this video generation, like you were mentioning, is a very interesting place for startups to be operating as well. Like, who's dealing with all of these IP problems when you want to create your, Star Wars Episode 10, or who's dealing with that like verification of what is truth and what is not truth. These are big problems for companies like Adobe to be solving about verification. So definitely a lot of second order effects plays that are interesting to startups there.
Okay, so the next one is the first 10-person, $100 billion company. So actually, it's funny because they, in the previous batch, had the first one-person unicorn. So that was 1 billion per person. This is 10-person for $100 billion company. So this is 10 billion per person. They just 10x'd the number. So the idea that Aaron Epstein is developing in this request for a startup is basically just like as cloud and AWS, for example, made it very easy for anyone to start a business because you didn't need to build your own physical server infrastructure in your own office. You could just, open your laptop and build a startup, make it accessible in the entire world. Now AI tools is allowing founders to build a lot of AI agents. So to build a lot of stuff with very few people, instead of hiring, you have agents working for you. And of course, this gives those teams a big advantage against big incumbents that have a lot of people, a lot of politics, a lot of meetings that are just slow to move. So they think it's going to be, they think they want to build the first $100 billion with 10-person company. Laurie, any questions on that topic? Do you think they're going to make it? And how should we be thinking about this?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question for like VCs in this space, especially. So I'd be curious to know like what's Lobster Capital now looking at when you look at the teams in YC? Do you think about how many people are actually on that team at the moment, how many people they say they're going to need? And then the other question in there, and this is actually called out by Aaron Epstein in the request for startups, like do companies actually need to go and raise that round after YC? Like maybe if you've done the 500K, brought on one or two people, and during the 12 weeks you've got to profitable, like are we actually going to see some companies, the typical thing obviously is to do demo day, raise your round, and then carry on. Might they actually skip that altogether?
I'll answer the second one. I mean, honestly, I hope this happens. It's not good for me, but I hope this happens because it's going to prove that the model works. And for sure, I'm glad that companies raise money because otherwise I would be out of a job. But the best money is money from the customers, not from the investors. So if you really can skip it, why not? I can tell you that today, I don't see any company skipping fundraise and demo day because when you're at YC, you're always commanding a slightly higher valuation than usual, especially if you're in the sort of the top of the batch in terms of revenue. And so taking, $2 to $4 million outside of YC on a high valuation, even call it raising 4 million at 40, that does happen. That's just a 10% dilution, but it's a what I call schmuck insurance. It's a good insurance. Instead, in case of anything bad happens, you lose your momentum, then you've got that money in the bank, and it gives you runway. It buys you time. I've seen so many companies run out of time and just die because and they just needed maybe 3-6 more months. And so I'm always actually, some companies they raise 2 million and they have a lot of inbound to keep taking more, and I usually say to them, you should take it if it's not too big of a dilution, sometimes we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4% more dilution. I'm like, yes, you're going to own 4% less, but your company is so much less likely to die because you've got that money. So right now, I don't see any company skipping that. I think they're all thinking the same thing. You should really optimize for longevity, not for zero dilution. Um, but again, I hope we'll see some startups doing that in the future. Also, the best startups out there, they don't touch the money that they're raising. They don't need to. I've seen and met many times companies that raise the next round that still have more than 90% of the money from the previous round. So raising is not just about needing the money. It's about getting new partners involved and just keeping the war chest bigger and bigger because cycles change and the bad times do actually happen. There's this metric that many people are tracking now. It's companies doing more than $1 million per employee, and Lovable is in there, Cursor is in there. I actually have a few portfolio companies in there, which is really exciting. I have a 9-person team doing 13 million ARR. So that's pretty cool. Now, to answer your first question, I actually think it's great news because hiring is extremely difficult. Everyone knows. And, honestly, there's also a talent shortage in the Valley, in the Bay Area. Almost every company in my portfolio that I talk to is struggling with hiring the right people. Of course, they're YC companies, they're very ambitious. So they want their bar to hire, the bar to hire is very, very high, but it is difficult for them to hire. So this new world of AI agents means you can do more stuff just with two co-founders. There's very few solo founders in YC. It's usually 2 or 3 or more. So just 2, 3 people and the right agents, you can go much, much, much further. It used to be that right outside of YC, or even sometimes during YC, you really need to bring a few people on board because if you're growing, you're going to need to service that growth. You're going to need to build new people to have customer support, to keep expanding your customer acquisition. Like, needs to be a lot of people. But today, you can plug a bunch of agents on all the tasks, including fixing bugs, including selling your product. And so you can go further with 2, 3 co-founders, maybe 1 or 2 hires. And then it saves you the time that you spend hiring, and it takes a lot of time. It also saves you the cost of bad hires because they often happen. You don't always get it right from them. I've had bad hires as well, and this takes a lot of energy and time and money, sadly. So I think it's a net positive. Now, will it go all the way to 10%, 100 billion? I don't know. I I think it might be slightly for show, right? This kind of big, big, big number to impress people. That's okay. We might have a few that exist. I don't think it becomes necessarily the norm, but that's okay. If you're a $100 billion company and you're not 10, but 400 people, it's still insane. It's still amazing. And this for sure is going to become the new norm because, again, because of AI tools. And same thing for the companies never raise anything outside of YC ever. I think that's sort of an exaggeration. It will for sure happen a few times, but it might be that instead of raising a seed, an A, B, C, D, E, you just raise a seed and a series A. And then you become a 100 billion. Like this for sure will happen. We've seen it before. I mean, Zapier only raised a seed, I think, and they're not a $100 billion valuation yet, but they're a big company. I think over 100 million ARR. So yeah, it's going to happen. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, both for the team size of strictly under 10 and for the fundraising of strictly just 500K YC. Maybe, but maybe it's something that instead of doing a 5 million seed, you do a 1.5 million seed. We already see that happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes those quotes just travel a little bit easier. Like when that, the viral comment about Sam Altman talking about the $1 billion company. So if people are maybe failing to point out that, OpenAI has about 7,500 employees or something.
Exactly.
So, so yeah. And one of the things you touched on in there kind of leads really cleanly onto the next one, which is the infrastructure for multi-agent systems. It's Pete Kuhlman talking here. And so basically this is talking about how actually as people start to circumvent needing to hire a lot of people, they're starting to put together agent-based systems. There are some problems in there, like anyone who's tried to deploy those kind of things, there's a lot of duct tape that's
Oh
needed.
yeah.
There's a lot of kind of micromanagement that's needed, and I today maybe there's still a little bit of an irony in the time it sometimes takes to kind of keep those things running efficiently, compared to the manual work. And so that's kind of the problem that needs to be solved, and he's talking about here. So you've probably seen, maybe 300 to 400 companies working on this over the past
Yeah.
couple batches. But yeah, what do you think about the
No, I mean,
AI
you're right.
agents problem?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. This sort of is a prerequisite to the previous one. So, I mean, I try to play with this all the time. I also think the VC industry, like, there's many use cases for agents, and 2025 is famously the year of agents. But like I'm just repeating what you said. There's a lot of duct taping. So yes, I see a lot of YC companies trying to fix that. I haven't found. I've tried almost all of them, especially the YC ones, but the rest, I don't think we're there yet. Which is what, and probably Pete doesn't think so as well. That's why he's asking for more. Um, there's actually, well, I have my favorite, but still, it doesn't work well at all. So when this gets somewhere, I think this unlocks a lot, because the first step is AI, right? And then the second layer is agents, autonomous. But then the multi-agent system that really work together, that's how you really build companies. Or, there's this fantasy of, oh, we build an entire company that's run with AI. It doesn't even need to be an entire company, but you can offload a whole part of your business to a multi-agent system. Again, let's take this very simple example. Like I just said earlier, this podcast is edited with AI, but there's manual intervention, and then it goes on YouTube, it goes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It goes, some clips go on X, like all of the, and there's no agent able to handle everything all together. So that's just a very simple thing. But when this happens, I don't want to automate my entire business, but I can take this part and give it to a multi-agent system and just have them run with it. So this is probably one of the most important part for adoption, because today you have agents that you cannot really integrate into your workflow, or that still requires, I mean, it's still good if you have an agent that instead of spending 5 hours, the agent spends 4 hours and you just spend one. Like that's where we are today. It's good. But when we'll have this, it's going to unlock a bunch of new things as well. So yeah, that's absolutely needed. And this is also linked to the next topic. So shall I move on into this one, the AI native enterprise software? Or Laurie, did you want to add something on the infrastructure for multi-agents before?
No, I just think that we're all kind of waiting for something that feels as easy as using, say, something like ChatGPT and Claude to
Yeah,
actually generate these workflows. Because, I've used things like Make or N8N, and they're still, you spend a lot of time actually, ironically, asking ChatGPT or Claude how to solve the issues that you're
that's
having
true.
building those agents.
At least we have this. Before, we would just have to figure it out ourselves. It's true that when I'm stuck, and I know everyone does the same, I do ask ChatGPT, and actually not always, but very oftentimes it is helping me with a solution. So it's pretty good. It's just taking you much shorter time than Googling and finding the right website and blah, blah, blah. So the next one is by Andrew Miklas, AI native enterprise software. The idea is that he's talking about the example of Salesforce and ServiceNow, that both make more than 10 billion in revenue a year and both valued over $200 billion. So very huge software companies, obviously, and both of them started 25 years ago, which they were the first sort of cloud native. They replaced software that you had to actually put on your computer with cloud native. So they started 25 years ago with the internet, and they're great, but they're big. And they're trying to go after AI. Salesforce, very famously, is very aggressive there. But very likely they're not going to build something as good as a new startup. So he's also asking for companies to come build at YC the AI native replacements of those softwares. And it's not only Salesforce and ServiceNow, it's the AI native everything. And we've seen every genre, every possible iteration of this at YC already, but they want some more. And I think they're absolutely right, because not everything has been done. There's a lot of the obvious ones, the AI native CRM. We had all these AI SDRs and sellers and emails, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of every software company used today are cloud based, but they're not AI native. So there's still a lot to be done. And I thought the link was pretty clear because those companies are probably going to run on multi-agent systems as well, hopefully. But I think this one is very good. It has to be in there. It's also sort of very obvious, but we've talked about this at length together, and curious to have your opinion as well. But that YC doesn't want people to reinvent warm water. If you're just building the AI native Salesforce, which is the obvious thing, but it actually works, that's going to be it could replace a 200 billion market cap company. So that those are very good bets to take. They're sort of very simple, and the problem is they're very crowded. I was talking with a fellow investor, and he told me about the upcoming batch. There's going to be one winner in this space, but we're talking about difference. But like, how do we know who it is? That's the tough thing with those companies. But of course, if they are at YC, they already get a big advantage of the branding of YC, of the help they get, of everything. So it makes sense for YC to have all of those companies. Laurie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I will kind of want to hear whether actually the next sort of like Salesforce for AI is actually like an interface that sits in front of Salesforce, so an agent that doesn't open Salesforce, but because companies are now so entrenched with data in things like Salesforce, HubSpot, um, Oracle, who are all doing their own heavy investment into this, is it actually that it's almost too hard to get companies out of those systems? Like if you're a very large Fortune 500 company, you might have, 30 or so years of data in Oracle or something. Like, are you going to leave that? And what are the effects of leaving that contract? Like, so is the win here actually for the AI native companies that embrace these legacy enterprises and
Hmm.
enable them? Because
You
then it
mean
also
interface
gives
on
a
top,
clear path
right?
for it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
like, because of, the cumbersome nature of those companies, like are they going to build the best interface to interact with their own data, ironically? Probably not.
Don't you
So is
think
there someone
don't you think AI can also very easily help to migrate or scrap or ingest the data to extract it easily?
yeah, possibly if they can do that like in a safe way. But I wonder whether like almost in the way that Salesforce started with like a single vertical in CRM and then has widened out a lot in terms of product offering. Is it the same for the AI native ones, that the AI native foot in the door is actually integrating with
Yeah.
these legacy ones and then widening out across that stack?
Yeah, that's very possible. That's probably a smart play for any vertical AI founder out there. Start being a layer on top and integrating with whoever you want to disrupt. And then you can slowly start capturing the data and, like you said, offer horizontal other services as well. We'll see. We'll have to see what comes out. We know Mark Benioff is scared. I would be scared as well if I was CEO of HubSpot, CEO of Salesforce, CEO of all of those companies, because and of course they're heavily building in AI themselves, but is it going to be to the level of two scrappy YC founders who just want to, I think they might be in trouble. We'll see. I mean, it's also there was famous discussions on the All In podcast around this. It's easy to get the startups in the Bay Area to sign up for $1,000 contract. But if you're on the big guns, the big contracts, it's not only about the software. It really is about the relationship that you have. They talked about the steak dinners and those Salesforce have people who spend $1 million a year just treating people to dinners and shows and events and blah 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 just to have their business. And so if you have the relationship with the Salesforce guy, he's your pal, he's taking you drinking, he's blah blah blah. Maybe there's a better solution out there, but no one ever got fired for choosing Intel. You just can stay with Salesforce and you keep having so that's going to be another issue. Like two scrappy founders can easily build better software. Can they actually sell better and do the steak dinners and stuff? This is still to be proven.
Right, and I had a quick look at like what's Salesforce cash on hand at the last earnings call, and they got $12.5 billion in the bank. So,
Wow.
as soon as you start like messing around in that space, like why would they not just come and acquire you?
And
Which
they
is
can
obviously
just
great, great,
uh,
great news for investors, but
it's
it
great
doesn't
news
mean
for
you'll be the
investors,
next
and
Salesforce.
they can also buy you with their shares. They don't even need the cash. You trade Salesforce shares.
Mm.
You can sell them the next day on the stock market. They're liquid. So the cash is even, just another weapon, but their shares as well. Many Facebook acquisitions are done with shares, and so they don't even need to touch the cash. Yeah, really cool. Okay, let's go to the next one. Using LLMs instead of government consulting. So the US government spends $100 billion a year on consulting. And Gustav is saying, as you might imagine, this isn't the most efficient or innovative part of our economy. So this idea is very simple. There's obviously huge incentives for the government to lower its spending. It is also a very clunky, cumbersome, not well run, well oiled machine. So here, AI can obviously do a better job than consultants for almost nothing in terms of price compared to actually paying those whatever BCG or KPMG or whatever consultants at a very, very high price. We've seen this with YC, honestly, even before Trump and Doge and everything, like I've seen it for the past 3-4 years, like, anyone that can help sell to the government. I mean, you see this in every country, right? The government is not the most tech savvy. It's true in the US as well, sadly. I think, but the difference is in the US, they really want to change that, at least right now with the latest, with Doge and everything. So there's such an obvious gap to fill here. It's pretty much like the arms race that we talked about. There's an obvious gap to fill. Same thing with the government. So this, and it's no coincidence that Gary Tan is very, very involved in local politics, and YC just hired their first politician to go and sort of pledge the case of small startups to Washington. So they're very interested in politics, as they should be. I think it's good. The government needs help, and there's for sure software here to be built. My big issue every time I see a startup in this field is, are they able to get in the door with the right people and to sell? Because it's notoriously difficult to get access. If you have the access, very likely you're going to do great, but it's not that easy because everyone wants to sell to the US government because it's a big budget. And so the doors don't open themselves. Laurie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. I almost wonder whether there's like another irony here in that like as more of these AI tools come to market, like I was just thinking about the UK government. I think there was a report at the end of last year, something increase in spend on consultant by like 60%
Ouch.
to 3 billion, which is 3% of what the US spends, but it's still a lot. And I would imagine actually a lot of that consultation is driven by things like AI, where they say like, oh, there's this new thing. How do we implement it? What do we do? And then they go and spend, $100 million on an enterprise consulting contract about how they integrate that. So there is
Yep.
some big
That's true.
irony in there.
That's the irony for sure.
But
Yeah.
then at the same time, like, yeah, I don't know if consulting might be the lens that I would go after if I was selling into governments. Like, I'd be interested to see like how the startups like scale the aspect of politics and government. That's like this one-to-one thing. Like everybody wants to know the representative, everybody wants to kind of know the president. And I think like what AI is good at the moment is like scaling individuals, right? Either through kind of content multiplication or actually through kind of chat interfaces and things like that. Like, could there be scenarios where I think in the US a senator is only allowed to employ something like 4 full-time employees? Well, actually with AI, like does their workload actually increase a lot? Does the access of constituents to speak to that senator, can they speak to like these replica AI versions or whatever of them, is more something that I think is interesting, and is a place where government can potentially lower spend on um, those the burden there from governments that people actually really value. Would be interesting. I think that is seems like an exciting space to play in.
Oh, for
Maybe it's
sure.
just I don't know enough about consultancy.
No, it is. It is an exciting space as well. I agree. I would love to see something like that come. It's true that politicians are pretty much out of reach, and there's even I was thinking of fake avatars, like you can speak to Steve Jobs or Einstein or whatever. So you could have just a fake avatar of the president and run every. It all we've talked about artificial societies as well, which I just had on the podcast. It's probably the episode just before this one. And it's almost an artificial politicians, artificial president, and also you could speak with the Senate. You could go in front of the virtual Senate and pitch your idea, and see their reaction. Like there's so many things we could do. I mean, I think why consulting, I agree with you that it's not necessarily the most obvious thing for me either, but 100 billion makes you like the number speaks for itself. If we can solve that, it's already like such. I mean, that's why I think it's there. It might be one of the biggest spending line overall,
Mm.
and there's a lot of things that can be done with AI there as well. So I think what you're referring to is fascinating, but probably cost less. It's a because it's a problem costing nothing. It's just costing that no one is able to actually speak to their representative. It is a problem as well, but it's not costing money probably. So both are worthwhile. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah, I
it.
think there's a piece in there as well about like I think in that in the RFS they reference like Deloitte and Accenture, and is it like, well, do actually Deloitte and Accenture go and win more government consulting contracts because they're unable to be more efficient, whereas the government is kind of like systemically inefficient at the core, and it's is that a problem that can be solved from the inside out? I don't know.
Do you think
Yeah,
Deloitte and Accenture are going to be selling to the government? Okay, let's do a mission together on how we can use AI and LLM and to get all the budget and build them even more, and then have them
yeah, absolutely.
not do anything or say, "Oh, we'll integrate AI for you and get all the AI budget internally," but just as a way to make more money. Yeah, that's possible.
I think if a YC startup came along and pitched to the government that they had, a product that could lower government spend on consultancy, the government's response would be to hire consultants to see whether it was possible to implement it or not. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, it's funny, but it's a problem too. Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. Horrible. Okay, I think that's a good place to leave it for today. Laurie, thank you so much for going through this RFS with me. That was really cool. So tune in for our Summer 25 Demo Day debrief, which will be published on this channel Tuesday, September 16th. Demo day is the week right before, and then we'll be busy with Laurie taping right away to bring you the debrief on September 16th. Tune in there. And of course, in the meantime, you'll have your regular episodes here with amazing YC founders. So I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. And thank you again, Laurie, for joining. Bye, everyone.